with Kay and Clay. Kicking it with Kay and Clay. Kicking it with Kay and Clay. Kicking it with Kay and Clay. Hey everybody, thanks for watching and listening. I am your girl, Kay Marie, and thank you for kicking it with us today. Today I have a very special guest. I've been knowing him for quite a while. And he has been married for about 16 years, I believe he said. And I just want to talk about this having a successful marriage. What are the keys and some myths that's out there that men can't be monogamous. So we're going to tackle all of that today. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce today's guest. His name is Trevelle Bibbs, and he is a graphic designer. He have his own company, Integral Solutions. I'll have that information for everyone during the broadcast. So right now, help me welcome Trevelle Bibbs. Hey, how are you?
Hey Kay, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Now that I'm off work, so I'm got my second win, so I'm a little bit better.
Yes, I also have a day job. I'm a technical illustrator by day, so I understand.
Okay, so
Just
you understand.
yes, I'm just thankful to be able to work from home.
That's a blessing. We were talking offline. It is hard to get back into the swing of things after I've been working from home for about 3 months, so I was just telling my coworkers like it still haven't kicked in yet, just being there back at the office, but it's all good.
Indeed.
So, like I was saying in the intro, we're gonna just talk about having a successful, faithful, loyal marriage. Is that even still possible today? With everything that's you've been hearing in the news and people that you might know personally, marriage is no joke, and people, left and right, in the church, out the church, just getting divorces, and it's sad. And a lot of that has to do with quite a few things, and just want to just talk about that today. Okay, just let everybody know, before we even go there, I just want to say how we met. I don't know if you remember this, but Clay said I have a memory like an elephant, but I remember we met, I believe it was like back in 96-ish. It was on we went to the same church, and they had a singles ministry there called Yes, Young Enthusiastic Single Saints. And we went to Four Bears Water Park. And so that's when I remember you and some of my friends that I'm close to today, Tanya and Kim and Aisha, and we all,
Exactly.
so
That was the connection.
that was
We
the
met
connection.
because of Tanya. Tanya
Yeah.
and I, you and I share a common link in Tanya Phillips, and I've known her since '93, and she's among you and Tanya, among others, are some of the godly women that I've met over the years that I've had platonic relationships with. And so certainly our relationship goes back over 20 years.
I know,
Like you
right?
said, back to the 90s.
The
And so we've
90s.
had a chance to watch that journey together.
We have. Oh my gosh. And then we sang in the choir
Mhm.
together for a minute. And then were you in any other cantatas too?
Yes, I've been in a few cantatas over the years. So,
Yeah.
yep, being a part of the drama ministry.
Yeah.
I've attended Word of Faith for over 30 years. It's been 33 years to be exact.
Yeah. I don't attend anymore as of about 2 years ago. But up until that point, I've been going since 91, since I was
Right.
in like 8th grade. So so that's how we met, everyone. So and we used to call you Bibbs too. I don't know, we just like the last name. This Bibbs is just
Yes, I did. especially Kim. She does.
yes. Yeah. Okay, so just give everyone some like background of how long you've been married, your family, your wife, your kids. So just before we really get into the meat of this, just give us just a little background on that.
Well, just a brief, T May. I'm actually born and raised in the city of Detroit, so I am a Detroiter. I was educated also in the DPS, graduated from Cass Technical High School. I went to college to U of M, earning my bachelor's and master's in medical and biological illustration. And the most important part of who I am is I am a believer. I gave my life to God when I was 10 years old. It wasn't a decision that was forced upon me. My mom and I had a quick conversation that day. She asked me, "Are you sure this is what you want to do?" I said, "Yes." She said, "My life will never be the same." And it hasn't. And so, of course, we've been attending that church for a long time. But and and I met, as far as my wife is concerned, um, I I am married, as it'll be 16 years in October.
Okay.
So um, we initially met through a mutual friend of ours who was also in our wedding. On her birthday, it was like one of those um, Venus Mars parties, and it was for our friend's birthday, which was on December the 4th, 2000. So when I met her initially, I wasn't looking at her like that. But I got on my knees in 2001, the last quarter of 2001. And in between, we had ran into each other at like Kings Island Resort. It was one of those singles retreat where it was like over 100 something women to like 12 of us guys.
Right. That happens all the time that way.
Right. And so she took a picture of me at that event, which was in 2000, the summer of 2000. And like I said, then 2001 comes along, and I'm talking to the Lord about, having a wife. Prior to that, of course, as a single man, I wasn't shy about dating. But, I think one of the most important aspects to my journey was two things: the Word of God, and the second aspect being my mom's mentoring. To be honest, I have to give credit to whom credit is due. Learned some valuable lessons from my mom, and that really helped to really impact a lot of things in my life. One, she taught me how to be honest under pressure, even if it means getting in trouble, being honest, even if you don't look good in the equation. And she also, in lieu of honesty, she also taught me about manipulators. And so, of course, manipulators are predators who use lies as a tool to, in order to influence your decisions and, have you do what they want you to do.
Wow,
so
mom was teaching the real, wasn't
she? Wasn't playing, and she taught me how to value and have some self-esteem. So, I wasn't, whether I was by myself or among friends, I knew how to discern character. She taught me some valuable things that really impacted everything, even how I received the Word of God. She taught me how to think for myself, and for that, I'm forever grateful.
Yeah, she taught you some good nuggets.
Oh,
that's some good. I mean, really, that's some good life nuggets. Because a lot of people, especially women, but not limited only to women, fall prey of being manipulated by people, especially men. So that was good that she, taught you not to do that, so you won't be that type.
Exactly. So, I did date and different things before getting married, and there was a journey in and of itself. When you're single and you're away from home, you get to see what you're truly made of. And of course, I didn't have men in my family teaching me healthy ways of dealing with women, but thankfully my mom was there to teach, to encourage me not to use people and things like that. But still, there were times where I made choices where I compromised my values and principles. But the one habit that I did have was always telling the truth and being honest. Sometimes I made emotional decisions and things without thinking first and truly, considering the situation. And so by the time I was in a place, well, I'll put it this way: I wanted to be happily married. Okay. So when I was going through that journey of dating, my first objective was to get to know people and find out who they are, what they're about, and where they stand. And I didn't want to be like a shallow type of guy. So it wasn't, looks wasn't as important to me as character was. So I was always attracted
That's
to that.
rare.
Yeah, well, that was me. I was kind of attracted to independent women, people who were like my mom, who knew who they were, had their own mind. I wasn't afraid of that. That didn't intimidate me because I was an independent guy anyway.
Okay.
I learned how to cook, and I didn't need someone to do any of those things for me. But what I've learned through that journey was, women value respect. Just you think, people think that respect is more of a male thing, but it's actually a universal thing.
Yes.
Women want to be respected.
Yes.
Women want to be secure and be with somebody they trust,
Yes.
just as men do. And so when you're not trying to use people and things like that, it puts people in a safe place. And so that's what kind of opened me up at times to temptation. I as a single man, I ran into aggressive women along the way. I met different types of personalities, but some of
Mm-hmm.
those people I came across were aggressive. They were, pursuing me, and some of them even had boyfriends.
Oh,
Some of them even
wow.
had white husbands. So yeah, it was crazy. The things that I saw in my journey. Now, of course, I didn't get involved with married people, but nonetheless, people still. That's what I found. Like I say, I learned a lot
Mm-hmm.
meeting those different personalities over the years. But having being in the habit of telling the truth really helped me to be focused and make some quality decisions at times when I needed to evaluate what was happening. And then at
Let me
times in
ask
my
you
life,
something, Trevelle. Why do you think? Because I think that's key. And I know that openness and honesty is a characteristic that a lot of women we value and we want in a mate. So by you being open and honest, why do you think some men are not?
well, as a couple, I would I would say there are two types of liars out there. One would be the liar who lies out of fear because they're afraid of dealing with consequences. That's the person who they may, in a lot of circumstances, be a good person. They're not out to hurt anybody,
Mm-hmm.
but and in some respects, they may not even know themselves and understand those deeper, more nuances about who they are. And then you also have the predator who deliberately trying to deceive you and exploit you. And certainly, unfortunately, I've had those types in my own family, and that's something that. So I got a chance to learn about how liars operate because, again, I seen them in my own family,
Mm,
and I didn't want to be that.
okay.
But I could see that if I didn't deal with some things as a single man, some I could have had those same curses happen in my life. And so I did take some time to prepare. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that people run into prior to, when they become married, especially when they marry young. A lot of people don't know themselves. And by the time they do, they're in a place that they don't want to be.
Yeah.
And then too, you gotta, even believers fall trap
Yeah.
because we still live in the flesh. The flesh doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
So you always have a choice at any given point, but we're creatures of habit. So if you establish good habits prior to getting married, you have a lower likelihood of maybe falling into that trap. It's not to say that situations can't be tempting at times, especially if you're going through those ebbs and flows in a relationship where you might have some issues of communication gaps. You might have some conflicts where, and if some of those other things start happening and you get neglected, or when people get into a cycle of pointing fingers or not being
Mm-hmm.
accountable, or all those typical things that happen in relationships, you can fall prey to that. And so I find that as a believer, it's important. The fruits of the spirit are important. Love, joy, peace, long suffering, goodness, kindness, meekness. Well, it's three of them in particular that are very critical to having a healthy relationship: humility,
Mm,
self-control, and patience.
mm,
You know, and a lot of people don't have that, especially in this instant gratification society that we're in.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so you gotta be. you got to learn how to think like God. And so how do we do that? Well, that's why the word of God is so important, because when you start to get to know God in the scriptures, because me learning about God wasn't strictly from church. I actually spent a lot of personal time in the word of God, personal time in meditation and prayer. And so those that relationship helped me to understand the more nuanced issues that are in the word of God that people
Mhm.
don't always preach or teach about.
So
And
that came by you being in the word and studying the word for yourself and getting your relationship with God for yourself. That strengthened your character to be open and honest, and as you pursue the woman that you wanted to marry.
certainly. And I found her on my knees. I
Mm.
was, like I say, it was a simple prayer. I was like, well, Lord, I want somebody I'm made for and that's made for me. Um, and I want it to be a no brainer, which means I want to be able to make a decisive decision and know I'm in the right place at the right time. And, I told God that I trust you with the details. You know me through and through. And prior to that, he had already told me not to, and not that I'm hearing voices, mind you, but on the inside, God told me to not settle, because I could have gotten married young. I've been in a couple of relationships that were long term, year to 3 years on average, and like I say, that's what he told me. And another thing that stuck in my head from my mother: when you marry the wrong person, it's like the sickest feeling in the world. And I remembered that. Not and see, the thing about it was, at the same time, even though my mother mentored me, I wasn't a mother's boy in
Okay.
a sense. So I didn't let my mom get involved in my relationships or interfere
Hmm.
in that respect. So I knew how to balance the two, but I knew that she knew what she was talking about,
Yeah.
especially with me being a believer and studying the Word of God. And so I'm thankful to have had that balance.
Okay. So you see, we're gonna get back to your story. So you see, Michelle, your wife, at the event, correct?
No, actually, well, that was, again, we're from that, in between that event and that prayer and me
Okay.
starting to date her. I didn't see her much in church. She was one who volunteered, so I rarely ran into her. And if I did, it was like high and by. So
Okay.
it wasn't like something sparked out of that meeting. It was more like I was talking to the Lord, and it was like, hey, when you're ready for this to happen, you let me know. She popped up in my head as I was talking to the
Mm.
Lord in that initial prayer, and I knew something about her. It was like God gave me some inside information about her in that instance, and so I just kind of, I was like, when she popped up in my head, I'm like, what? Her name is Michelle. Why am I thinking about her? Okay, and so, but in that instance, he was showing me her lifestyle, the fact that she been, keeping herself. I knew her, how strong of a person she was, how grounded and giving she was,
Mhm.
shall I say,
Mhm.
and just the person you see behind closed doors, even some flaws, and um, I remembered those things. So 2002 comes around, and there was maybe a third prayer where I was like, well, Lord, when you're ready for this to happen, you set it up. So I ended up going to a singles meeting 2002. It was on a Friday. And in fact, I really wasn't there to meet anybody. I was there for the word. That's what was going through my head. Well, the
Okay.
person I ended up sitting next to was the very lady who I saw in my prayer time,
Mm.
and so afterwards we exchanged business cards, found out our companies were doing business with each other. As far as the company I worked for and the company she worked for was a supplier to the company I worked for, and she worked within about 5 minutes drive from where I worked.
Oh, wow.
Not That's not only the funny part is I met people in her family prior to. We had worked in some of the same places over the years, same companies. We're just years removed. I had played ball with one of her niece's fathers.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of connection. Her roommates, her college roommates, was a sister to a couple of brothers that I went to high school with, who were my classmates. So many connections between us. It
Mhm.
was just uncanny.
That's
Not
awesome.
to mention, we have a lot in common. She's an artist as
Mhm.
well as I am. she's just 6 years my senior.
Mm-hmm.
So she got me by 6 years, but she looks about 20 years younger than her age.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thankful to have her. I do truly feel at home. We dated for 2 years, 7 months. We were able to both abstain from fornication. One was weak, one was strong, and vice versa. So both of us were committed to our relationships with God. And that was one of the most important things that I was seeking in a wife, was someone who had their own relationship with God, someone who could hear by the Holy Spirit.
Mm.
And she's a tough cookie.
She
I
is.
got on her
She's a tough
nerves at
cookie,
times.
but she's a sweetheart at the same time.
She is. She is. But I told her right before we married, I let her know everything that was going on. I put everything on the table. I said, if you can't live with the type of man that I am, this would be a good time to leave, because this is who I am. And so I also took the time to meet with her parents. I met with both her father and her mom, independent of, she didn't even know that I had met with them. And I let them know what was going on in my life and things like that. And, I just leveled with them and formally asked for her hand in marriage. And that was that. So at those critical times when she was ready to throw in the towel and be like, I'm done with this guy. Not that I was trying to get her parents to be on my side. It
Right.
was just, she talked to them. She's like, well, we done already talked to Trevelle. You better get it together. So,
That was a
but
good move. Good move.
hey,
Okay, so before we go even further, it was a question I posed on our social media, on Facebook and on Instagram. I asked for couples who's been married in the game for about 10 years and or more, like what are some of their secrets? And I said I might read the comments on the show, and I am. So my first one comes from my brother, actually. He's been married for 9.5 years. And he said that this is his words. Our secret is that divorce isn't an option, which we agreed upon before marriage. Also, we both believe the other person is the most awesome person on the planet. And then another Facebook comment is from Mario. Mario said a tip would be willingness to apologize quickly. That's good. And then the last one is from our Instagram, one of our Instagram followers, at Journey Travel DG. She said, add humor and laughter to your marriage. So do you agree with those?
I agree with all of those comments. Marriage is a ministry. That's what it's about. And sometimes you may not always get your way, and that's the thing. That's where the fruits of the spirit come into play. God tells us to love your neighbor as yourself. And it's two commandments that Jesus told us: love the Lord thy God with all your heart,
Mm-hmm.
love your neighbor as yourself. On those two
Mm-hmm.
hang all the law and the prophets. So you don't even have to have all the details in the word when you see those two, because those two encompass a lot. And really, there are three statements being said there: love your love God first, love your neighbor, and love yourself. And so when you love God, you do what He says,
Yeah.
because Jesus defines it. And so you can't control what the other person can do, but you can control how you respond to situations.
Ooh, say that again. I think that needs that needs to be repeated.
Again, I'll say you can't control what the other person does, but you can control how you respond to situations. So one of the things that I would, you really have to trust God. You do also have to take responsibility and accountability for your own actions and choose to obey the word, whether the person is doing you right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to trust that He can deal with that other person, and He does. If you
Yeah.
if you do what He says, trust me, He brings that other person around if they are a believer and they're reachable. And so, yes, you got to be thankful. You have to remember that you're not in a war. This is your friend, not your enemy.
Mm.
So if you remember that, you won't treat them like they're the enemy or somebody you're competing with.
Mm-hmm.
You will love them and forgive and forget, just like God expects us to. That's what a lot of people can't understand. Well, how is it that you can turn the other cheek? How is it that you can forgive when somebody's done this or could have done the same thing over and over? Well, again, the word answers that. And I remember it was like one day I was in the word and it was like the light turned on because he showed me the reason in the scriptures. He said, because I do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what was speaking to what I was talking about earlier. God expects us to act like, to operate like him. And that's
Right.
maturity. Some people
That
think
is
I
that is
can't be
maturity.
perfect.
Yeah, that is because like you were saying though, and I know people who might be listening or watching, they may not be believers, um, or they may not be, into the word like they want to be.
Hmm.
But these are just principles that work, you
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
and because you have people, and I'm just being real, you have people in the church, that's like know the word and everything, but they still going out committing adultery, doing this, doing that, and they know. And then you
Yeah.
have those who may not be as into the word or anything like that, and they have a
Hmm.
wonderful marriage, and
That's true.
so,
Well,
but
that's because the word
the
works,
word
whether
works.
you know it, because word is about life. So even if you didn't read a page of the word, you look around you, that speaks for itself. And we all have some type of principles that we operate under.
Yeah.
Some people, it's street. Some people, the Bible to them was what they saw in their family. And so we all have some type of principles
Yes.
guiding I choose the word because all
Yes.
it's doing is documenting what has happened in life. There's
Yep.
nothing new under the sun. You live long enough, a lot of those stories and cautionary tales, you see it in life. It's
Yep.
just, and it's nice when it's written down because at least you have an opportunity to take heed. My grandmother taught me years ago, learn to listen, listen to learn. That's powerful.
It is. Because we have two ears. So listening must be a very important factor.
Right. But it's written. It is actually written. Be
Yeah.
quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to wrath.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like I said, the word does work. And that's
It
one
does.
area that I personally had to make some adjustments with. Okay.
Okay.
Not to be anxious to try to talk things out. Sometimes less is more. I'm not necessarily like the typical guy. I'm a communicator. I do listen. I do pay attention. But some people, you have to, every situation you have to be patient. You
Mm-hmm.
can't be quick to try to hash everything out, but sometimes you can't give up on those conversations you must have. Because yeah, I love me too. I like to be treated well. I'm used to that, and because I don't like self or double standards,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes people want to be treated better than what they're willing to do.
Mm.
So you run into those things. You see it around. We can look at couples all over the place. People at different levels of maturity.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times when there are issues in the marriage, there's pride, sometimes there's deception. I mean, you see those things happening. Uh, uh, women are just as capable of having an ego as a guy.
Yeah.
So it's not, an exclusive thing. Sometimes you see fear.
Mm.
And then of course you see deception, um, just all types of things, and just immaturity in general.
So
Somebody
somebody,
got to be willing to say, "I'm sorry."
yeah, like you said, that goes with because that can be pride, and you have to have humility, really. So okay, it might be somebody watching, that's been married, even they've been married for a few years, or even they've been married for longer than that, and they're having some communication issues. So since you're a communicator, what do you suggest, or how do you suggest that a husband and wife communicate? And what can you give us like an example of, let's say if you and Michelle don't agree on something, that could potentially become an intense fellowship, as I like to say.
Mhm.
So how do you guys deal with that to like bring it down?
uh, Walk away.
Mm,
I mean, like I say, we you don't want to pick heated times for for working out things. You, like I say, it goes back to patience, prayer. In my case, I would say prayer in the sense of seeking counsel from God, because usually if I have a conflict with my wife, first thing I do when I'm talking to the Lord about things, I ask him questions like, what could I have done differently in this scenario?
Mm.
How do I stack my actions stack up with the way you see the situation? And and then I say, if I'm doing the right thing here, then I, I'll ask him to talk to her, and then, there are times where when I'm doing that, when I'm operating with that patience and not being anxious to try to talk something out, it works out where we can have a sit down and discuss. We're both very busy. We're both type A personalities. We volunteer, we work. And then sometimes you got to uh, declutter your life. Sometimes you could be doing too much. You have to
Mm.
prioritize each other. And again, so like, I know my priorities, my wife first, children, God, wife,
Yeah,
children, in that order. Some people don't have their priorities in the right place.
that's
If
true.
you understand where your priorities are, and then if that's not happening, then like I said, as a leader in my household, I have a vision for how I want our house to operate. And to be honest, as a rule, we do have peace. It's peace. It's nice when you have somebody who has different levels of maturity. I didn't want to be a husband tiring out my wife. I've seen too many, especially in the Black community, too many women tired because their significant is not taking care of business, or is not mature, or
Hmm.
all the above. And I didn't want a tired wife. I wanted my wife to know I got her back. And the
Hmm.
best thing that I could do is protect her with fidelity. I
Yeah.
didn't want to be no skirt chaser, because I believe that woman's trust, or is like a child's innocence. Once you lose it, you do not get it back. And that was a lesson I learned as a single man. That was what God taught me and showed me in the process, and how valuable that is, and how it's worth protecting. And so my wife don't come home worrying about and paranoid about where I've been, who I'm talking to, and all of that, because I treat her like I want to be treated.
Mm.
And I do take care of business. I'm very financially astute. I know how to pay bills and all of that. So the stuff that people typically fight over, she certainly can't fault me in those areas, because I take care of business. And
It's
so I did take some time to prepare myself before getting married.
that's good. It's something that you we talked about before, but you mentioned it too, just briefly, about some of the men in your family, and that you didn't want to go down that path. So, what do you say to the men who think like, can no man be with this one woman for the rest of his life? So, about they say that, So,
Right.
like, what do you say to that? Because of course, it's you're living in, as well as other men.
And I have a son.
Mm.
I have a son, and and I have a daughter. And we've been mentoring our children and teaching them about these things. My son he's been raised to be a gentleman. He's a kind person. Um, he's a good looking kid. And I've seen the girls, drooling over him,
Mhm.
just watching him from a distance. So I'm preparing him for these things. And that's where a lot of guys run into issues, is a lot of times they're reacting because they haven't set up boundaries to begin with, to understand the value of being abstinent from sex. You don't want to be single acting like you're married, and married acting like you're single. And then too, and that's why people get confused, and they get stuck with people that they should have left a long time ago. When
Mhm.
you are with somebody, or getting, you're dating somebody who your principles and your lives do not align. Um, that's the time to step back and evaluate. But if you're having sex with people, you're clouding your judgment. You're making it difficult to be able to clearly see what's happening in the relationship and what's happening within. And so, to those guys especially, I would tell them to have some boundaries, use some self control. It's worth it, because if you want, why be with somebody random when you could be happily married with your wife, the one who you are compatible with, someone that you enjoy doing things with. It's a waste of time to be sharing yourself with anybody but your wife.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would say. It is possible to have what you want, but if you wasting your time over here and over there, when that good woman cross your path that you belong to, you're distracted. And then
Mm-hmm.
two, you don't want to carry bad habits into a marriage. Um, if you're used to and accustomed to not having self-control and governing yourself sexually, what happens is you set yourself up for failure in a marriage. So you don't want to establish bad habits.
Okay. So what made you at what point, I should say, in your life when you saw, what different people, men in your family was, what made you think, you know what, I want to go another way. I don't want to do that. At what point did you decide that?
Well, I mean, it was always detestable to me to begin with, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest with you, because you're looking at the other person, you're looking at how it's impacting their spouse.
Mm-hmm.
In one of my family members' case, I was in their wedding, and I know how good of a wife that person had, and that of course that person is no longer with us, but I remember that person behind closed doors just being braggadocious about his exploits and knowing how his wife treated him. It was deplorable to me. And the other individual, that person had been operating, multitasking with women since his teenage years. And I'm seeing that individual and how they're operating as a 60-plus-year-old, and they still haven't gotten it. And so, and then seeing and then when you're seeing multiple women going through the same experience, and it's like, and I know a lot of good men. I'm like, why are you even dealing with that? Seeing the absurdity of an independent, nice woman who's looking for a stable relationship. Why would you even tolerate um, nonsense
Mm-hmm.
and foolishness? To me, it's foolishness.
It is.
And bottom line is respect. It's about respect. Fidelity is about respect. And so I like one of those individuals, I had a conversation with him. I said, how would you like it if your wife was doing those nasty, freaky things with somebody? Oh, she wouldn't do, but what if she was? How would you like it done to you? And I got in his grill and I told him, I don't want to ever hear you talking about or bragging about what you've done with some other woman.
Mm,
It's not cool.
yeah.
Now you don't hear men talk to each other like that often,
Right.
but I talked to him, and he was older than me by 8 years. I was in college at the time when I had that conversation with
Mm. You're right. Men, they don't. Well, I'm not going to say they don't, because I'm sure that there are some that do, but it's important that men get around other positive men that's doing what they want to accomplish. Because if it's that whole adage, birds of a feather. So if you're a married man and you're hanging around, a guy who, let's say he's single, and he, get hooking up with this chick, that chick, that chick, you guys are constantly like hanging around, you might put yourself in a situation where you don't want to be in.
him.
And I really believe that good men mentoring, mentors are needed, especially in our community, where I'm not gonna say it's lacking, because we do have some good upstanding brothers out here. They don't get their due justice as much. You hear us women, "Oh, all men are they, oh, all men do this, all men do that," and it's like, no, it's not. There's some good ones out here.
Yeah. I also have to admit, though, I may have alluded to it, but I want to plainly state, there were times where I made poor choices. There were times where I made mistakes. And I know the difference for me between mistakes and a poor choice. When you make a mistake, you're not thinking. You're making an emotional decision, or you're doing something out of ignorance. You're trying to do the right thing and you do something wrong, versus making a poor choice where you make a calculated decision to do something that could potentially have a bad outcome. That's a bad choice. And I make a distinction between the two. There were times where I didn't say I certainly wasn't a predator, but I compromised. And I
Mm-hmm.
never felt good about, um, compromising my principles outside of marriage. And so it was looking in the mirror during those times, or seeing how my actions was affecting because someone may have caught feelings. Um, there were times where I may have started out where I'm trying to keep myself, and the person thinks I'm being uptight and not realizing, no, I'm trying to protect you.
Yeah.
It's not about me trying to be uptight, or that I don't want to have fun. I want to have fun in a responsible way. And so, yeah, people should think before they act. But a lot of times when people do that, that you might have somebody that feel like, oh, no, 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 it don't take all of that. Yes, it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it does. And so that was one of the undercurrents in my prayer time. I didn't want to waste anybody's time, and I certainly didn't want a trail of tears behind. So I did get to a place where I was able to say no to situations, where I could go out with somebody and they were thirsty and trying to kiss me, and I could say no to the situation. I got there, but it was a process. But if I had somebody like myself mentoring me at a young age, I would have more than likely avoided those situations altogether and made some more quality decisions along the way and not compromise myself. It took time for me to get to a place as a single man to where I had some boundaries that I didn't cross. And so, of course, I mentor my son, and I've mentored other young men who are now men, and I've seen the effects of how, where their lives are. One of them got married, a couple of them got married. One of them's a good father, and so, and that was prior to me even having children. So that's why I so thank you for even allowing me to be on your show,
Mm-hmm.
because this topic is dear to me, and these nuances you don't always hear in the church.
That's true. That's true. Now I know that we are always, as people in general, learning and growing. And I know that you and Michelle coming up on 16 years. So is there like anything that you want to like improve upon, um, in your marriage?
Well, like you say, we all works in
Mhm.
progress. Well, not. I just want to make sure that we're balanced and not wasting time, being with the minutia of life.
Mhm.
So yeah, I want to spend more time taking my wife out for dates and things like that. To me, that's important because tomorrow's not promised to us. So the person that you love, you want to appreciate them as often as possible.
Yeah.
I know one thing I can tell you definitively. My wife does love me. She is crazy about me. She does some of the little things that without me even asking. She
Mhm.
ministers to me and my family, and so she's awesome. I thank God for her. She is a godsend, and yeah. So, and of course, the things we've been working on is communication.
Yeah.
Like I say, my wife. Um, some of our upbringing and things we saw were similar, in some respects, and then to some differences. Um, and so, she developed a certain way. My wife is very independent. Let's just, that's really one of her, it has there are byproducts of being independent,
Mhm.
like trusting somebody else's leadership.
Yes.
So, and so that probably, and it was some, I would say, subconscious things. You know what I'm saying? So, um,
Hmm.
that I think that was the biggest challenge for my wife is
Okay.
just, because she was single into her almost into 40.
Okay.
She was. I got married in my 30s. She was in her mid 30s, almost late 30s, and so I think that was the biggest challenge for her. And the thing about it, I bring this up because there are a lot of women who are waiting to get married,
Mhm.
and so and because of that, some things they may not even understand about what it is, their expectations. I think women should understand and know what their true expectations are. A lot of that stuff is subconscious. Sometimes you need to bring that stuff to the surface so that you understand what you truly want from your man. And then look at, again, like I say, as a believer, how does that align with the word of God?
Mhm.
Are your expectations realistic? I think that's one of the things that causes problems too in relationships is, of course, I know most women don't like being told no. I'm a not right now type guy because I ain't trying to keep up with the Joneses. You know, I'm not trying to be stressed out.
Right.
We paid our house off back in 18. So,
Oh, good.
you know,
Congratulations.
but I could see stuff like this happening. But if we were making emotional decisions along the way, trying to impress people, you could be in dire straits. So, like I said, I got a long fuse in one respect, but I know certain things I don't budge on,
Okay. And you
for good reason.
yeah, right. Now you mentioned something that you say you guys go out on dates still. And
Certainly.
we've been taught in the church, like when you get married, you should still date your mate,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
So okay, like I've hear from some men, because a lot of us women, we like romance, some more than others. But then you have, guys, men who say, well, I'm not romantic, I don't know. And I said this on one of my other shows. They have Google stuff is like at your fingertips right now, so it's no excuse. So what do you say to a guy, a husband, or somebody that's about to, get married? um what do you say to him about being romantic and make sure that the romance is present?
I would say number one, it starts with knowing your lady, because every woman is not it's not a cookie cutter thing. And that's one of the like the things I learned. I was single a lot longer than I was married. Well, I was single for a long
Mhm.
time, so I had a chance to find out that every woman's not the same. And that's the thing, oftentimes when you hear preachers, when preachers may have gotten married young and think, and they're looking at women based on that woman. When the fact of the matter is, every woman's different. My wife likes
Yes.
sports. She's
Mhm.
she's like in one respect, how guys will turn on a basketball game or football. That's my
Mhm.
wife. She
Mhm.
loves it.
Mhm. It's
She
a lot.
likes
It's a
it.
lot of us like that.
Thank you. And so there is somebody out there for you. But bottom line is, it's about knowing your woman. And
Mhm.
see, that's what's dear to a woman when you really know her, like you see her.
Yes.
That's a sign of respect, and that's one of the things that help women be more attracted to a man is when they actually take the time to observe and
Mhm.
recognize what's dear to their heart and respond in kind.
Yep. No
Um,
lies. There's no lies in that. What you just said. That's the truth.
I mean, some things are more valuable than money.
Yeah.
Now you got some women out there, they might be the bougie type, they might gotta have the frilly, and the flowers. Some people it could be simple as buying some Kit Kats.
Mhm.
It just depends. It's the little things.
Mhm.
What's little to one person may not be little to the next person. You
Exactly.
got to minister to your mate based on knowledge. And then again, that's written.
That's right, man. You hear that? So get to know your woman. Get to know your woman. Okay, so before we wrap up, is there anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Well, to the women, I'd also say it's important also to learn your man.
Mm-hmm.
That's also critical, and not be in a relationship based on what a person can do for you, but
Oh, yeah.
based on how can do we are we compatible? How can we be a blessing to each other? Because when you got to learn how to give with no strings attached. So
Mm,
see. Now, of course, you do have to understand your worth. If you're in a situation where somebody's being abusive, that's a red flag to tell you to leave.
mm-hmm.
And so don't tolerate, the time to make those decisions and evaluate is when you're single. Take the time. Dating is about getting to know the person that you see as a potential. And don't be afraid to walk away if you have to walk away, which is why it is important and critical that you don't engage in premarital sex. You don't want anything clouding your judgment. Plus, not to mention the obvious things, you don't want to be exposing yourself to unnecessary stress.
Okay. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. So before we end this broadcast, like I said in the beginning, Trevelle, he is a graphic designer, illustrator. He have his own company, and it's right here on the screen. And for those who are listening, it's integralsolutions.com. And just briefly, let's tell a little bit of what you guys do, because I want to, make sure you get your shine on.
Well, Host K, I want to thank you for that plug. That was really nice of you. I wasn't expecting it. Um, our company is a creative services company, so we work in more than one category. Most of our clients are small business owners and startups who are in need of marketing or need of marketing materials or business communications. But the bottom, and we do illustration, technical as well as creative. And our services are really about helping people to improve their bottom line or save money. So we're usually doing one of our materials. Usually, it should achieve one or two of those objectives.
All right, awesome. So you guys, if you need any of his services, you know where to go. Integral Solutions, Integrell Solutions.com. Thanks again, Trevelle, for gracing us and blessing us with your wisdom. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Host K. Really appreciate you, and
Thank
thanks for having me on.
No problem. And we're gonna have you on again for some other things too, if you don't mind.
Wow, I'll be honored.
Okay,
I'll be
because
honored.
yeah, I can listen to this all day. I just love soaking up knowledge and wisdom from people that's actually living it. And I know, some people might be like, I don't know, that might be a little bit too much, but it works. Certain things are avoided because of the impact that it might have down the road. So it's all good.
Well, people, I can tell you as uh, just by example, there have been many instances where I haven't told anybody who I am or what I'm about, but they look at you. People look at you and
Hmm.
they notice what you're not doing. They'll
Hmm.
notice when you're not cussing. They'll notice that you operate a certain way. They're like, "Are you a Christian? Are
Right.
you a preacher?" You know. And I've had people ask me that. So again, God told me a long time ago, you got to before you open your mouth to speak the word to people, let your life speak to people.
Yes. Yep. And that's what it says in the word.
And I
Your
could tell
life.
you, oh, one thing I forgot to mention.
Go ahead.
When you have a healthy marriage, it affects the children,
Mhm.
because, marriage is about stability. And so if you're treating your mate on a regular as a lifestyle with respect and dignity, and the children see you loving on each other and being affectionate with each other, it gives them stability and peace, and they love it. They don't like seeing their parents at odds.
Yeah.
And you don't have to act. Like I say, if you focus on what's critical and what's important, you try to take care of each other. Um, it's not something that you have to work at in that sense. But marriage is work. But
Mhm.
most of the work is on the inside, the inner me, not just the enemy on the external things, but the
Mhm.
inner me.
All right. Well, with that being said, thank you again. It's just like I said, I know you have a lot in you, and like I said, we're gonna have to have you on again where we can talk about like some target specific things about kids and just different things in marriages, and because we have to uplift and show that a successful, faithful, loyal marriage is possible. It still exists.
Amen.
And um, Trevelle and Michelle, they are living witnesses as well as other people, that you may know. I know I've know a lot of people whose marriage is very successful, and not saying they don't have any issues, but it's very successful, and they're doing what they need to do to make it that way. Okay, so like he said, it's work, and it's not something to get into lightly at all. And so with that being said, thank you so much, everyone. We you know how to reach us. We're on all the streaming platforms. We're on Facebook at Kicking It with Kay and Clay, and Instagram. So just and Twitter. We just joined Twitter. So go over there and follow us at Twitter, y'all. Okay. So thank you so much. And we will be back next week with another topic. Okay. And thanks again for watching Kicking It with Kay and Clay. I am your girl, Kay Marie, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Kicking It with Kay and Clay. Kicking It with Kay and Clay. Kicking It with Kay and Clay.